Hello and welcome to another Jay's Politics podcast, part of the Podcast 99 Internet Radio Network. You can reach us at podcast99.org or me directly at jpolypodcast on Twitter or at jpoliticspodcast@gmail.com. Today I am working on a little pre-recorded show here today. Talking about an article that I got news or heard from Stefan Molyneux and his YouTube channel. At the end of the video, I'll be playing an end credit scene that will show you the link, and I'll also have it posted down below as well. So please feel free to take a look at that and watch his video. I honestly haven't watched the whole thing, but I kind of get the gist of what he's saying from this article, and I thought it would be. I think it's one that I should tackle as well. So, the article is at NBCnews.com. As you can see, I've got it highlighted here. That will also be in the description below, as well as on the end credit scene at the end. The article is The Temptations of Twitter: Why Social Media is Still a Minefield for Journalists. And honestly, it's not just a minefield for journalists. It's a minefield for everybody. And I'll go into that a little bit later. I'm going to read the article here and go through it with you. But what I see here, what I read here, what I interpret here, is that this is, without a doubt, a very much a left-leaning progressive news article. Without trying to ruin it or spoil it for you before I read it, the article goes into why, when a journalist says something on Twitter that could be considered by others, mainly the right or the center left or center right, or anybody else, as contradiction or blasphemy against your own social justice narrative, to the left media, the progressive media, the mainstream media, it's like, no, this is just a joke. This is just a minor inconvenience. But if somebody of the center left and going right at that point says something, you got to deplatform them. You got to get them off of whatever shows or radio or internet platform, anything like that. Even if it's the slightest bit of a faux pas. So, the sub headline is Politico editor-in-chief John Harris became the most recent high-profile journalist to slip up on Twitter, where there is a temptation to stray from reporting. This article is by Dylan Byers, dated today, October 22nd, 2018. Last posted or updated at 8:43 a.m. Pacific time, my time. As you can see here, for those of you that are listening to this on Podcast 99 Internet Radio later, or if you downloaded it directly from the Podcast 99 network, there's an image in the article that has the Twitter logo, the tweet bird, with a fuse that's, lit and sparking everywhere. It's an illustration by NBC News and Getty Images. So, article reads: Politico editor-in-chief John Harris has spent nearly 3.5 decades in American political journalism, building a reputation as a fair and principled reporter, and perhaps more important, helping to create a media organization that wields significant influence in Washington while commanding the respect of both Democrats and Republicans. I don't know of any Republicans personally that are fans of Politico. It's not to say that there's not. There very well could be. I follow Politico because I do find some of their stuff insightful. I don't blindly follow everything that they say, just like I don't blindly follow anything the mainstream media is going to tell me. But I do feel that it is that this, like Stefan says, and I'm not trying to steal his thunder, I highly suggest you go watch his video on this. but as Stefan will point out in his video, this is a poisoning of the well fallacy. This is a poisoning of the well, trying to get you to lean and sympathize with John Harris. That what he did is an honest mistake. That what he did on Twitter shouldn't ruin his career, shouldn't ruin his life. But we don't even know what it is yet. If you followed the story before this, obviously you know what it was. But I'm just saying, in the course of this story, we don't know what it is yet. So, when Harris became a target of a conservative criticism last week because of a tweet, there's a link here. Let's see if it pulls it up. Oh, white nationalist leader wants to take over the GOP, NBCnews.com, politics, immigration, blah, blah, via NBC News. This is the original tweet. And we'll go back to... Oh, I don't want to do that. Go back one. And thought that job had been filled. So that's the tweet in question. So because of a tweet that Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel described as offensive. Okay, I'm not going to go to the Hill for a follow-on. I'll try to go through and pull up all the links here and post them into my description below. But Ronna McDaniel described as offensive described as, quote, offensive, end quote, and, quote, an example of why distrust in the media is at an all-time high, end quote. It left a few of his staffers feeling disappointed and perplexed. Some current and former Politico staff members who spoke under the condition of anonymity so they could speak freely about their employer expressed confusion and disappointment about Harris's tweet. Now, honestly, Harris and his people, or I should say Harris's staffers, both current and former, having to speak under a condition of anonymity, that leads me to believe that he has sowed a fear into them that they could be in trouble if they speak out against him or speak out against the narrative that they've set up at Politico. I don't know. I don't work there. I'm not going to speculate much more than that it is a possibility, but it's not the end of the world. So, all right. Next paragraph, it also serves as a reminder of the perils journalists face on Twitter, where there is a temptation to stray from reporting and share jokes and opinions. One errant observation or an improperly worded thought, and a journalist can find that they've inadvertently exposed their own biases to the world and caused a firestorm in the process. That's the problem. That's the problem I have with this article. That's the problem I have with NBC News on this. It's not just journalists that this happens to. It is any and everyone on Twitter. I tweeted out something on my personal Twitter just a couple hours ago that if somebody took it, they could say it did it in bad taste, which it probably was. But I don't care. I'll stand by what I tweeted out. That's fine. But to make it sound like reporters, especially mainstream media reporters, left-leaning media reporters, are the only ones that are in danger of a misrepresented tweet, that they're the only ones that shouldn't be punished for this, is kind of hard. I wonder if this links back to that. Let's open that back up, see? Oh, no, a different tweet. In Harris's case, it was a tweet on Wednesday that seemed to imply President Donald Trump was a white nationalist. again, here's his tweet. And James Poniewozik, Poniewozik. Sorry if I butchered your name. I'm sorry about that. But it's just one of those things, being called out by the New York Times of all competitors. It's kind of funny. In response to an NBC article about a white nationalist who wants to take over the GOP, quote, take over the GOP, end quote, Harris tweeted, quote, thought that job was filled, end quote. The criticism came quick from former White House press secretary. I've made my spelling errors. I just find this funny that a professional news agency can actually misspell press secretary or misspell press. But anyways, criticism came quick from former White House press secretary Sean Spencer, calling it a, quote, partisan attack, end quote, while GOP operative Arthur Schwartz said Republicans should not take calls from Harris or his reporters until, quote, until this guy is gone from Politico, end quote. Critiques that also happened within the Twitter sphere. Now, I don't agree with that line of thinking by the Republicans. That's just making you out to be the bad guy in this case. Yes, I would call it a partisan attack because you can obviously tell that it is his personal opinion, his personal belief that, quote, thought the job had been filled, end quote. However, by egging it on, you're only making it seem, how do I want to put it? It makes it so it seems that you guys are too sensitive to what's the word I'm looking for? Too sensitive to take this on. So, honestly, the editor Harris needs to, one, apologize. Two, should also just take a break from Twitter. Honestly, let this blow over and stay off of Twitter for a while. I mean, that's just my opinion how it should be. But, what do I know? Harris later tweeted that he had been misunderstood, that he only meant to make a quip about the NBC's headline. Quote, sometimes wisecracks get lost in Twitter translation, so appreciate the chance to clarify, he tweeted. So here's the stream on Twitter. This from the editor-in-chief and co-founder of Politico. Until this guy is gone from Politico, no Republicans should take call or help his reporters. He's not hiding it. This is what he thinks of us. Despicable. And I commend John Harris here for this. A fair point at Arthur Schwartz. This could be interpreted as a broad swipe rather than a quip about a headline on the NBC piece. Sometimes wisecracks get lost on the translation, so appreciate the chance to clarify. Now, the problem is you didn't really clarify, John. You were just, oh, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to commit this faux pas. Please forgive me. But what you really should be saying is, sorry that I said it this way. What I really meant was that NBC, and I don't know how you could think that this quip, if you want to call it that, this quip could actually be interpreted any other way than an attack on Republicans, or more specifically, the president. Love or hate the man, I don't care. The office of president, at the bare minimum, should hold a certain level of respect towards it by both the press, and I'm not saying free of critique at all. By all means, criticize him and his policies, his administration, fine, by all means. But there should be a certain level of respect given towards that office in particular, whether you agree with the person that's in there or not. And the same goes for the right when Democrats are in there, when anybody who you oppose is in there. I don't know about you guys, how you feel about that, but that's just my opinion. All right, going back to the article here. A lot gets lost in Twitter, which makes one wonder why journalists of Harris's caliber was quipping on Twitter in the first place. The platform provides many invaluable services. It's a news ticker, a chat room, a place to promote one's work. It can also provide instant gratification, the chance to command attention, earn followers, engage with political adversaries, build a professional profile. There are thousands of journalists on Twitter, most of whom tend to stay well within the bounds of professional use. But the nature of Twitter itself makes particular examples of partisan behavior stand out, in turn opening news organizations to accusations of partisan bias. That's very true, especially when you are spouting a bias. Even if it's a quip, it's still a bias that you are saying that you believe, whether you intended that to be the message or not. While that has been true since the social media platform was created more than a decade ago, the vulnerability seems especially acute in this combative and hyper-partisan political climate. I wonder who created this combative, hyper-partisan political climate. It couldn't be the mainstream media, could it? Nah, what am I thinking? They would never, ever promote things such as, people to the right of us are evil, Nazis, that identity politics is the only way to go. I don't know. I must be just losing my mind here. Back in July, New York Times Magazine writer Emily Basleon tweeted her opposition to Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court nomination, writing that his appointment would, quote, harm the democratic process and prevent a more equal society, end quote. 3 months later, the Times said it had erred in letting her report on Kavanaugh because she was not a newsroom reporter, even though her report was, as the Times said, straightforward and fact-based. Even though her report was, as the Times said, quote, straightforward and fact-based. That's funny. This is just... You can't make these things up, people. I mean, the way the mainstream media holds itself to this moral standard that they know better than everybody else, and that when they make a mistake, it's okay. But you have people like Roseanne that makes a mistake on Twitter. You have Alex Jones using platforms that are available to him, and because people don't like it, because you don't like it, you push to get him taken off of a platform. Why? Why do this? Do you just want to live in an echo chamber? Do you just want to live in a one-party system? 1984 style? Thought police, newspeak. I don't know. It's not just new, it's just not new tweets that are landing journalists in the middle of partisan controversy. Numerous writers have had to answer for old tweets after they have taken jobs at major media institutions, leading to many journalists begin deleting their old accounts. Oh, another faux pas in spelling. One is actually right there at the New York Times. The editor that clearly is what's the her name? I can't think of it right off the top of my head. I think Stefan brought it up in his video, but I'm sure I'll figure it out eventually. Jim Vandehey, the co-founder and CEO of Axios, who is also a political co-founder, was recently went so far as to suggest that journalists stop sharing anything on Twitter other than links to published reporting. He's also implied that reporters' social media activity almost always betrays a left-wing bias. Wow. I can't imagine why. News organizations should ban the reporters from doing anything on social media, especially Twitter, beyond sharing their stories. Van de Hey said in remarks to students at the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh over the weekend, "Snark, jokes, and blatant opinion are showing your hand, and it always seems to be a left one. It always seems to be the left one. This makes it impossible to win back the skeptics." Yeah. This is an apt quote from him. Quote, "Snark, jokes, blatant opinion, showing your hand, and it always seems to be the left one. This is making it impossible to win back skeptics," is exactly why Ronna McDaniels said what she said. This is exactly why. If you have a bias towards us that are not in your far left progressive political sphere, identity politics, you're not going to win us back by proving to us that you are biased towards the left. I don't watch, Fox News or Tucker Carlson because I think they're 100% fact-based or anything like that. No, I watch them because I want the other side of the story that I get from the left-wing media. If I go to Breitbart even to get the other side of a story that you, the left-wing media, the mainstream media, will not share to me because you think you know better than me what I want to know. That's BS. Just total BS. Van Dien also said that Axios' social media policy, quote, prohibits the sharing of political views or derogatory snark online. Additional quote, "Don't say anything on the internet that you wouldn't publish under your byline or say on TV." End double quote. While other news executives aren't nearly as extreme in their views of Twitter as Van de Hey, many are wary of social media's potential to undermine their organization's reputation and credibility. Many editors also chafe when they see reporters who are expected to be fair and nonpartisan fire off a pithy bit of snark or opinion, or get mired in a zero-sum debate with their critics. And the more notable the journalist is, the more leeway they tend to have in sharing their opinions on Twitter without repercussions. Again, that is fair. And there are some right-wing journalists that do have this bias or this preferential treatment as well. Not many. Definitely, they don't get that treatment from the left. They get it from their constituents, the right. But that's not the point. The point is if you are trying to be as a reporter apolitical as possible, you need to check your bias at the door when you show up to work. And if your work is involving you to go on a trip, you check it when you leave your car or your ride or whatever, and you go on with it. And you don't pick it back up till you get home or get to basically back home, That's the way it is. That's the way it needs to be. If you are a professional journalist, in my opinion, small as it may be, you need to check your bias at the door and do your job. I would love to be able to talk politics at my job, but I'm not allowed to because I'm in a retail customer-based system. And if I did that, I could jeopardize potential customers. I don't know about you, but I don't want that. So, moving forward. In recent years, many newsrooms have put policies in place regarding reporters' social media activity, but they aren't always effective. NBC News guidelines dictate that social media accounts are to be held to the same news standard, including principles of fairness, accuracy, respect for copyright laws, and privacy rights. End quote. I don't know if I quoted that at the beginning, but quote, principles of fairness, accuracy, reporting, or accuracy, respect for copyright laws, and privacy rights. End quote. As editorial content. And this applies to personal and professional accounts. I can understand why the NBC News would have this policy in place, both for professional and personal accounts. Because it's not too hard. If somebody really wanted to search for my personal account, they could find it. I don't post a whole lot of stuff there, but I do. I can spout off a bit here and there. That's fine. Mostly what I talk about is retweeting somebody I follow every day, or whenever I see something of hers quite funny. Others is football, and most of it is though just retweeting. So it's not a whole lot of my own opinion in there. However, I have been known to say things snarky. I haven't been as active on my J. Polly podcast Twitter account just because I haven't had the time. I might even just get rid of it and go with my personal account, but I can understand why they have the professional accounts and the personal account rules. Several journalists took issue with Van de Hee's proposal on Sunday, arguing that journalists shouldn't conceal their true feelings from their readers. There is a time and place for that. Now, I honestly think that the personal and professional accounts should be separate, and that if you choose to make your personal one known, and you tweet something that shows your confirmation bias in your political leanings, or your bias in whatever story you're writing, that you have to be wary of how that's going to affect your professional account and how it's going to make you look. Some journalists are okay with doing that, but just remember, you could get fired for it just as easily as anybody else. So, say what you'll say. Excuse me. All right. Quote, this sort of policy says, yes, we have opinions and attitudes and sensibilities like any intelligent person, but we will conceal them from you, and therefore you should trust us more, end quote, says James Poniewozik. Sorry, I butchered your name again. The New York Times television critic tweeted, what idiot would believe that? In what other aspect of journalism do we believe that hiding information from the public serves the public? In just about everything the mainstream media produces is a biased and narrative driven. The attacks on President Trump, whether justified or unjustified, are moot at this point, in my opinion. But the fact that almost every single news outlet out there, major mainstream news outlet, ABC, NBC, CNN, CBS, MSNBC, all of them have a bias against the presidency because he won and Hillary didn't, when all of their polls said that she would win. Fine, whatever. But you don't get to sit here and say that. I don't like it when you sit here and tell me that the mainstream media doesn't hide information from us, doesn't tell us the full story. Whenever there is a shooting, whether it's at a school or a mass shooting or just in general, it's always driven from a narrative that the person is, if they're white, they're imbalanced and they needed help. If it's a minority, then it's their culture, and that's just what we have to expect from them. That's not the entire truth. We have to get to the point where the mainstream media is doing what it was supposed to do in the first place and tell us the truth. Not just what's going to make headlines, not just what's going to make you look better in our opinions, But no, you need to make it so we are getting all sides of the story. If somebody's leaking that Trump said this, X, Y, and Z, and you should all be ashamed and, worried faced, go ask his administration the honest truth. And the administration should, unless there's national security involved, should be telling you the truth. And if something doesn't jive, present both sides. How hard is that? Oh, but we don't want to make it too wordy, or we don't want to make the news segment run too long. Oh, darn. Give us the truth. Oh, this is where the token A Few Good Men clip should go in here, but I'm not going to edit it into this. Screw that. This is already long enough as it is. But I can't understand why this is even a thought. That they don't hide anything from us at all. There's no hiding of information from the public. Oh, come on. We all know you do. Sometimes it's for national security. Fine. I understand that. I'm ex-military. I understand that. But not everything. On most other things, you don't hide it because of a reason other than it goes against the narrative you want to put out there. So it is what it is. Quote, it's slightly amusing to see Jim Vandehee lecture social media companies when not so long ago he wrote a Wall Street Journal op-ed about how Mark Zuckerberg, wow, I can't speak today. Mark Zuckerberg should be president, end quote, tweeted Max Tanney, the media reporter at the Daily Beast. Ooh. Okay. The latest debate is just part of the larger, long-standing conversation about Twitter's effect on journalism generally. Columbia Journalism Review's Matthew Ingram recently cited a study that found journalists' news judgment was negatively affected by a preoccupation with Twitter. Some journalists, including the New York Daily Times' Maggie Haberman, that's the one I think it was. Is that the one I think it is? No, that's not it. Her name sounds familiar. I know it sounds familiar. I listen to her on POTUS a lot, on Julie Mason's Reporters Roundtable and things like that. All right, so Maggie Haberman also has taken time away from Twitter because of what Haberman described as a general, quote, viciousness, toxic partisan anger, and intellectual dishonesty, end quote. And I totally agree with her on that. Twitter can be that, especially in the political world, the political realm. You say anything out of context, because what is it? It's 140, so now it's what, 280, I think it is, 260 roughly, characters that you get. That's not enough to get full context of what's going on in anything, but it is what it is. Both Vandehee and Harris are familiar with how severe the repercussions for opinionated tweets can be. In 2012, when they were running Politico together, the organization suspended and then fired a reporter because of remarks he had made on television and Twitter, including one remark that suggested Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney was only comfortable around white people. In the memo announcing the journalist's suspension, Harrison Vandehee reminded the staff that all journalists had a clear and inflexible responsibility to cover politics fairly and free of partisan bias. Yes, they do. And that goes not just for politics, but any story. And that is the end of this article. But what I would like to see from this type of article, is not just the mainstream media, not just the left-leaning media, but also the right side of the media. Take a look at what they're doing on social media as reporters, as news organizations. If you are helping spread the toxicity, the vitriol of just back and forth tweets about how this reporter is awful, this news agency is awful, fake news, even though the president's doing it. I'm tired of hearing it. Come to terms with each other. Report the stories fairly. You know, Politicon was going on in Los Angeles this week, and I've heard stories of various debates going on down there, and it reminds me of just before, I want to say it was either CPAC or the Republican convention, when Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks were doing a segment at the convention, and Alex Jones came up. And Alex Jones was there to stir up trouble. I understand that. I'm not in any way trying to say that Alex Jones is blameless in this. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, he's 95% of the blame on that one. However, the way Cenk responded, the way Jimmy Doan and the other Young Turks members there acted towards him, they were baited into it and they took it hook, line, and sinker. That's what identity politics, that's what progressivism is doing to us. That all it takes is for somebody to come up and just say the wrong thing, or have said the wrong thing in the past to your progressive groupthink, that you insist that they're wrong and evil and have to be confronted at every single turn. But what I don't see from the rest of you is that you are allowing, or I should say, what I don't see from you is a willingness to come together, to come to realize that if you want to make, as Trump is quoted as saying, as Bill Clinton rallies once said, to make America great again, we have to put aside the identity politics, the constant bickering and battling back and forth about who's causing what strife in this country and why. You know, I mean, I could go in ad nauseum about things that the social justice movement, and yes, there are things that we do need social justice for. I'm not saying it's a bad thought. It's just being executed poorly. But the way you hear things in this world is that women are poor because of sexism. Minority communities are poor and downtrodden because they don't have a leg up. And that's what you're hearing from the left. And yet when you hear from the right, you're hearing their proofs of this is why this is, and the left is automatically saying, no, you've got it all wrong. It's because of the system. The system is what's causing these Twitter explosions on social media, the Roseannes, where you get kicked off a platform. If you're a leftist, it's okay, we'll let it go. Unless it's super egregious. But, the point I'm trying to make here, the underlying point of all of this, is that I want us, as a society, to bridge that gap. That the two extremes that we have going on right now need to meet in the middle somewhere. And the problem is you guys won't, because of your ideology. I'm not saying that progressives and white nationalists have to get in bed together, but there has to be a compromise on things. The YouTubers I've been following lately range from, especially in the political sphere, Sargon, Sinatra Says, Ranting Monkey, The Quartering, and Bearing, all from the skeptic / left, center left, and going right, to the Demotivator, Steve Shives, Christy Winters, Christiosity, and the like of them. Kevin Logan, to give you 5 for 5. Just so I can hear both sides of an argument. The problem is that all I'm hearing from the last 5 I listed is utter whining and no facts. It's just, this is my stats, and when I try to dig up sources, I can't find them. Now, I haven't dug too much into Dr. Winter's stuff, but her channel seems like one that if I needed to look up a stat, I would be able to find it. I'd find the source for it, which is fine. But others that I see and hear about and go and just find for myself, there's no sources. You just expect me to take your words at face value. So it is what it is. I'm not done doing this. I won't be done doing this. I'm sorry for the breaks that I've been having, but I've been taking a class that's really hard for me because I'm not very artistic in a visual sense. Sit me down in a band where I can play drums or I can play bass. I can be creative all day long doing that. But when it comes to actually putting together imagery, that's where I have a hard time. So that class is over after Sunday this week, the day, 28th. So hopefully I'll be able to get back on a new routine starting this week. Hopefully this Saturday I'll have something for This Week in U.S. Politics. But I saw this article from Stefan Molyneux. Didn't finish his video because I don't need him to tell me why he says what he says in it. All I have to do is read it. And you can just read how it drips with we're right, you're wrong type of thing. So I'm going to leave you with that and just hope that you understand that we aren't a nation of partisans. We should be a nation of people. And it's not just diversity that brings us together. It's not just the melting pot that the United States is. It's also that we have to have our own identity as well. And that's when those cultures come in and mingle with ours. And those cultures accept that they have to change some of their cultural beliefs. They have to change some of their cultural things. We have, used to be that I could say Merry Christmas to anybody and nobody would be offended because it would be like just, oh, Merry Christmas. Or if they were offended, they kept it to themselves. Others, it's nowadays, I can't even say it unless somebody says it back to me. And even then, if they say it to me first and I say it back, I can still offend the person behind them. So it is what it is. We need to get away from the social justice mindset and back to a cooperative mindset. And let's start by bridging the gap. So thank you again. This has been a Thoughts by Jay segment, part of the Jay's Politics podcast show, and part of the Podcast 99 Internet Radio Network. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube and BitChute, I will try to get my links to everything posted in below. Keep an eye on social media, because what happened to Alex Jones could happen to you. Have a great day. And just so you don't think that this pause was intentional, I did turn on my music. I forgot to unmute my soundboard, so yay. I'll keep my faux pause in here just as well. So